Okay, so we're back again with the other estimated liability that we're going to talk about. Um, and this is accounting for contingent liabilities. Now, contingency is really anything with an unknown outcome, but as we discuss it here, primarily what we're talking about is litigation. All right. And as you guys may know from your B Law 2080 course, litigation is a real expense that virtually all companies of any substantial size face. All right. So when we're talking about contingent liabilities, by and large, what we're talking about is that the company has been sued, and we know that litigation is not a quick process. So what this means is the company's been sued before the financial statement date, and there is a possibility of an adverse judgment or a loss that the company is going to have to pay. And um, so we have a decision tree that kind of details how we'll work through that. All right. And there are keywords here. So you'll see these words in problems, and that indicates how to proceed. All right. So contingency, that means the company's been sued. All right. And so management will have to sit with their attorney and determine uh, likely the likelihood of an adverse judgment, which means they lose the lawsuit and have to pay. All right. Um, and there are three choices. Probable, which means greater than 50% chance that the liability uh, that the company is going to lose a lawsuit and have to pay. All right. So, and the problem will give you this word. So if you see probable, a probable loss, um, you go to the next step. All right. The question then becomes, can the amount be reasonably estimated? How might this happen? Well, it's going to happen with similar lawsuits with similar fact patterns. You have a basis for comparison. If the same company has had similar lawsuits, or if other companies have had similar lawsuits that are public record, you can have a basis for estimating the loss. All right, so if it's probable and can be estimated, you book the loss, even based on the estimate. So you record um, liability, expense or litigation expense, I should say, and you take the hit against net income on the face of the income statement in that period, even before the judge's gavel has banged, right? If you think you're going to lose and you can estimate it, you record the liability, all right? If you think or the attorney thinks that you're going to lose and have to pay out, but you cannot estimate it, for instance, it's a case that um, is a first impression. There aren't similar cases to it for comparison. So you can't have a reasonable estimate. Then you don't, in that case, you disclose in the footnotes. Right? And you guys may remember at the beginning of the semester we looked at footnotes to the financial statements. So you explain that our company has been sued. Our attorneys believe that we will lose, but we do not have a basis to estimate the loss. Right? And so you write that statement in the footnotes to the financial statements. All right? We think we're going to lose. We don't know how much. Right? And that gives disclosure to your investors, your bankers, and the like. All right? The next alternative is possible. All right. Um, we've been sued, and we possibly could lose. Percentage-wise, this is greater than 20%, but still below the 50% threshold for probable. All right. There's a possibility that we may lose. If that's the case, you need to disclose that possibility in the footnotes to the financial statements. All right. And then the third option, remote chance of loss, less than 20%. All right. In that case, you pretty much ignore it. All right. You don't disclose it in the footnotes to the financial statements, and you press on. Okay. Next slide. All right. So here I've taken quick study 9-10 out of the back of the chapter. All right, and we have 3 scenarios. All right, and I'll just talk through these just to kind of illustrate what we discussed on the previous slide. All right, Humphrey, who is the defendant, also the company we're accounting for, estimates that a pending lawsuit could result in damages of $1.25 million. That is, it is reasonably possible that the plaintiff will win the case. If the plaintiff wins the case, that means Humphreys would have to pay. All right. So key word here, possible. All right. That's the middle choice. That is less than 50%, but more than 20%. All right. And in this case, footnote disclosure would be appropriate. All right. You don't book the loss, but you would have to write a footnote to the financial statements, making aware that the company is being sued. And you would, since you have a number, 1.25 million, you could insert that as a possible verdict in an adverse judgment. All right. So that's what happens here. Footnote disclosure. All right. In hypothetical 2, Humphrey faces a probable loss on a pending lawsuit. The amount is not reasonably estimatable. All right. So probable means more likely than not Humphrey is going to lose. All right. But you can't estimate the amount. All right. And so when you can't estimate the amount, we don't do so because that would be misleading. And ironically here, we end up in the same position as above. All right, so footnote disclosure. Humphrey has been sued, or we have been sued. We expect to lose, but we cannot estimate the amount of an adverse judgment. All right, so that's what happens in number 2. All right. Number 3. Humphrey estimates in a case, I'm sorry, let me say that again. Humphrey estimates damages in a case at $3.5 million with a high probability of losing the case. All right. So high probability, you're going to lose. Humphrey's going to lose, and you have the amount, $3.5 million. This is a bad day in the office because this means that you have to take that $3.5 million hit against income in the current year, even though the case may not be decided till next year or the year after. You need to book the $3.5 million expense, litigation, liability expense. And that means basically that your income would be $3.5 million lower than it would have been absent this case. All right, so that's just a quick walkthrough of how we apply accounting for contingencies in litigation.